Jamie is also a clinical licensed social worker, and she started the diaper bank with 15 years of nonprofit management behind her. So when she was a new diaper bank, just over the line to be eligible for the Funds for Change grant and submit the fantastic grant application that she did, we did a double take and said, okay, we want to work with you because you have this experience of being a new diaper bank, wrote a phenomenal grant proposal that we not only were able to give her a Funds for Change micro grant, but also Jamie, I called her up and I said, can you help us with the training resources to help other diaper banks that might be first time or not even first time grant writers to help people to be grant ready. So I'm really excited about the presentation that she's going to be giving. And take it away, Jamie.
Okay, great. Thank you. So thank you for hanging out. I know I'm trying to stay out of the way of the projector lights. So I like to move a lot. I don't stand still well, and I'm naturally very loud. So if you can't hear me, just let me know, and I'll be happy to yell louder. It's what I do, and I do it well. So how many of you all have never written a grant proposal before? Oh, this is so fun. How many of you have written and gotten funded between $10,000 and $20,000 worth in the last year? Anything over $50,000?
I didn't write it.
100. So you wrote. So we have some like really in-depth experience, and then we have some newbies. And so when Susan and I were talking about this, we're going to kind of hit some of the strategies that have worked for me over the years, but at a very basic level, with the option of if you have more in-depth questions, please let me know, and I'm happy to either take it offline or answer them here today. And so I really want to try to address this to the best of everybody's ability. So like Susan said, I've been writing grants for, I think I sent you a bio that said 15, but I think I'm getting older and I just don't update the years. It's probably closer to 20 now, but like, it's scary. So I have done everything from writing grants to a startup, which is what I have with Helping Mamas as a startup. We're 2 years old. I will tell you in that 2 years, we probably in the last 2 years have gotten close to $200,000 over 2 fiscal years in grant writing. But I work really hard at it, and it's not something for everybody. But I'm going to tell you the tricks I use. Now, I've worked for agencies that have $6 million budgets and have done federal, state, local grants. You name it, I've kind of done it. So we're just going to talk a little bit about what I think for smaller organizations, what works best, over what works best for larger organizations. I'm super informal, and I do not like to hear myself talk a lot, so please make sure you ask questions and interrupt me. So how many of you, do you all have your 501c3? Mm-hmm. Some do, some don't. They may have a fiscal sponsor. Do we know what a fiscal sponsor is? Do you want to know? Yeah. Okay. So for some agencies, so I went ahead and got my 501c3. Again, because I've done this for so long, I didn't want a fiscal sponsor, but it is a wonderful option for people that haven't gotten it and don't have a budget and don't have budget management experiences, but really want to go ahead and do grant writing. You can go to another organization and say, hey, like, we are in the process of, we want to be our own organization, but we're not there yet. Will you be our fiscal sponsor? And you submit applications under their auspice, which means you get to count their years of experience, but they do your financial management. So I'm a control freak, did not work for me. I need to be in my own control. If you're new to this, it's a really good option. I know a lot of organizations that have done it, and it's been very successful. And then you have a term where you say, okay, I'm ready to launch and kind of do my own now. We're going to separate. But this is all stuff that is a lot more in depth, and you would want to talk to more of a legal expert about as you want to go there. But it's a great option if you're a startup. Because for a lot, we'll talk about some barriers, why I think it's a great startup. Okay. Do you guys have, yes ma'am?
Community Foundation?
We'll talk about it. They're my best friends. We'll talk about it. I'll tell you how I use them. I do things very non-traditionally, and I have found that that works for me. So, and I'll talk to you about why I do that. Do you guys have a board of directors?
Yes.
Are they active?
Yes.
No.
They come to the meeting?
Do they donate? Not even cash or in kind?
Yes. Yeah.
I have a question about that.
Uh-huh.
So I've heard the give, get, or get off thing.
I have one, and it's really lovely.
What if, I can ask this question because none of my board members are in the room. So what if they do not give financially or donations, but they, let's say, lead up a fundraiser?
So that'll work.
Or write a grant that gets us something.
Perfect.
Does that count?
Yes, because a lot of donors, a lot of funders want to know, is your board giving? Do you have 100% board giving? Now, some will specify that and ask, is it cash or is it in kind? but that service is an in-kind
Okay.
service that they are providing. We're small, so I have a give a get or 1,000, and it can be in kind. So a lot of my board members will do huge diaper drives for us, and that counts towards their give or get, so I can say, yes, my board is 100% giving.
How do you communicate that to your board members, that they're basically required to give or
It's part of
get?
our bylaws, and when I sign new board members on, it is in a packet that they have to say, and I sit across from, I date my board members, they don't just get to come on, like we have lunch, they have to come volunteer, and I sit down and I tell them the requirements of being on our board is that it's a give or get over 1,000 each year. That means you can help get me sponsorships, which a lot of my folks do, or you can do diaper drives, you can do in-kind. And so it's upfront, I'm honest about it. The only one that's exempt for that is we have a spot for a social worker at a partner agency, and I do not require them to do a give or get because I know what they make because we don't make anything. And I really they are my constituents, so I want their voice there.
Would dues count as a part of giving?
Tell me more about dues.
If the board members pay dues each month.
That would be, but I'd be really careful, and I would talk to a legal person about like how you're counting dues. You might want to change that from dues to donations. I would just check on it. It's not my area of expertise, but I would just double check on the wording. But yes, it does. If they are giving and you set it up that way as a give or get, and a grant funder says, "Is your board? Do you have 100% board giving?" You always want to be able to say yes. Even if they don't ask, you want to be able to say, "We have 100% board giving," because that's what they want to know. That makes your grant proposal stronger.
And the get would be soliciting the additional money, or will that equal their volunteer hours?
It depends on how you set it up.
Okay.
I've never in all the years doing this had someone come. Now, large grants, I have had to literally put what each of like other organizations where we had 20 board members, I've had to go back and literally put what each board member has contributed financially. So you got to pay attention to the wording, which is what we're going to talk to you with the wording and proposals, and know what they're asking and why they're asking it, and that helps. But yes, if you can show they give a significant and you make up significant, so if you have a financial person on your board and they do your books, that is a gift in kind, right? So that has a value.
Right.
So yes, then they're
Okay.
giving. Okay. So those are all things you need to know. Financials. How many of you have an agency budget approved by your board? Right. Okay. Do you keep monthly? You keep your monthly balance. Do you know where that is? You can access it. Have you filed the 990?
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
I didn't know about that until I got here. Since we have a physical agent, I mean, do they do that or do we do that?
You're going to be you're filing under them. If your 501c3 is under them, then you should be good. Then you're fine. That's why you do it. So when I first got started, I did a 990, but I did the easy pass. I don't know if you guys remember, like, you don't make any money. Like, you can do an easy pass in the first year. I think we made $12,000. And I was like, check, we filed the 990. Very easy. I paid an accountant to do ours this time, which was really helpful. We'll talk a little bit more about we're talking about audits now. That's great.
Does it matter, the 990 or the 990 easy?
Say it again.
Does it matter?
No, if you're so small that you can do the easy pass, do it, because it's not worth the investment to get somebody. We're going to talk a lot about what's worth an investment when your financials as we go through this. So my budget in kind this year with grants will be close to 200,000 probably this year come to the end of the year. But I'm not going to do an audit because we're not at that point where we're qualified to do an audit, and I'm not big enough that I'm going to go after large enough grants that paying for an audit makes any sense for me.
So what amount would you suggest?
If I was going to go after a $50,000, for me, this is me, because I know the work I have to put into a grant and the reporting, what we're going to talk about. If I'm going to do about $50,000 or above and they require an audit, and I feel like it's a funder that I'm going to get repeated funded throughout the years, I'm probably going to go ahead and do the audit if they require it. Now, I've gotten $25,000 grants that did not require audits. So you have to know what they require and what they don't require. You can get, in my CPA friend, compilation, right? Is that a word that sounds familiar to you?
Compilation?
Yeah. You can get that. You can get a CPA to review your records and write a letter that says, yes, your financial practices are best practices and you are in good standing, like with the financial practices. And a lot of foundations and stuff will take that rather than an audit because they know smaller agencies, it's not worth it. So if you're doing a lot of federal funding, you have to have an audit. It's just part of it. So you got to look at that. So that's why I said to audit or not to audit. I met with a guy that used to run the SunTrust Foundation. SunTrust is headed in, they're in Atlanta, and they hold a lot of funders. And so they will talk to nonprofits and tell you what of their funds are you a good fit for. And he's a very intelligent man, and I walked in and he said, thinking that I was brand new to because when I told him how young we are, not realizing I had a lot of grant experience, he said, oh, you have to have an audit. And so I'm like, okay, you know, and he keeps talking to me, oh, like this grant, like I know this foundation, I've written to that foundation, other organizations before, the most they're gonna give me is $5,000 and they require an audit. I'm not gonna write a grant for $5,000 and pay $7,000 for an audit. Wow. That makes no sense. And I'm like, you know what, I know that foundation, and really they don't. So like if I submit, sometimes I'll submit my 990, which is really detailed because of all the in-kind stuff that we do, it's super detailed. And then I'll do our financial statements, and then I'll get my accountant to write like a compilation. I've reviewed these people's financial records, they're in good standing. It may cost me all of that combined for the entire year. I know my CPA really well, he's a family friend, so like $1,500, right? Compared to a $6,000 or $7,000 audit, it makes more sense for me to have that and go after smaller grants if I need it. But a lot of the smaller grants, as we'll talk about, which I would recommend if your diaper bank has never really written for grants, start small, not big. So we're gonna talk about that. So, like I said, I'm a big believer, and so is my CPA, and he does lots of nonprofits. Don't audit until you're that large that you have it and you're going after major funding. But that's just my personal opinion.
Just a quick question, and just because you kind of touched on it, and I'm trying to look it up real quick before. Difference between the 990 postcard and the 990 easy?
Easy, like you literally go on and you say, are you registered with the IRS? Yes. Do you have a budget less than, I can't remember what it is now, and you say yes, and they say submit. And then when you do a postcard, there's more information.
Okay.
And then there's another level, which is what I did this year because we had a little bit more money than I thought we were going to have, so I did whatever the next one is called. So
okay. So anything,
yep.
I have to like print and print screens
yes.
to show proof.
Yes, that's what I did too.
Yes.
And my mom's a CPA, and like I'm like, the first time I ever did, I'm like control, you know, did the print screen show my mom. I'm like, look, I just submitted a 990. She's like, I don't know if I've ever been prouder of you, you know, like, but I didn't do any financials. And my mom, who's a CPA and has been for a really long time, would not do my 990 because it's changed so much over the years. I went to someone who was currently practicing and doing it. Now she can do it next year because she can follow the forms, but make sure you have a good CPA that's doing it because they are not easy, especially dealing with in-kind. When you have product that you're holding on to, that has a value, and that gets really difficult. Is everybody here from West Side or East Side, baby? Okay, I think I downloaded their 990 because they had a similar model that I did, and I took it to my mom and said, this is what we're gonna need to do, and she said, no, let's go to Andrew, and Andrew did it for us. So like, you can look kind of at other organizations, you can go to GuideStar, and you can pull up any nonprofit's 990 and kind of get a guide and go, whoa, that's way too much for me to even try, I want somebody else to do it, and that's what I really recommend.
So what was the name of that group?
GuideStar.
No, the other one.
East Side and West Side, baby, they're
okay.
two separate organizations in Seattle that are very large. And I do other stuff other than diapers, and so do they. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted them, but they've been around for a long time, and I really wanted to use like best practices for what they had done, and because they've been around and had audits, and theirs had withstood that test of time, and so that's what I did.
Nice. Thank you.
Do you know the dollar amounts? I know we're past the postcards, so we're doing a 990, but I think there's like you said, there's now a higher level.
I think it's 200. It's 100,000 for the next
all
one.
Your in-kind.
Yeah, it's 100,000 for your next one, if I believe. It changes a lot, so that's why I go to Andrew and say, just make it work. And then I believe there's a 250 amount after that. And then you get to the audit point. So we raised over 100,000 last year in 2015, which is why I did.
In cash.
I did in cash and in kind. So,
Okay.
but yes, it's both. Any questions on that? Super confusing and not fun. So that's why I always say, like, these are the things to know, though, when you're writing grants. People ask these questions, and you have to at least have some semblance of understanding. Are you even ready to write a grant? But we'll get around that. Who tracks data? What kind of data are we tracking? Tell me what you're tracking.
Our inventory.
Inventory, so outputs?
Demographics.
Demographics. Mm-hmm. What about outcomes?
Outcomes.
What are some of your outcomes? So I've had your hand.
Increase product donation, increase product.
Okay. So yeah, those are good. Those are
Okay.
excellent starting points. I passed around a survey that we do, and so let me tell you how my model works. We're a bank, so we donate out to other organizations. So I don't actually see the end user. The social workers are my end user. Because I know how important outcomes are, which that's a whole other seminar, but this is all part of being grant ready. I did a survey, and you guys are welcome to take whatever you want from it. So some of our outcomes, as you see, are like, as a result of receiving baby items, I feel like I am able to serve my clients and patients more effectively. It's a very strong outcome. And so I'll say, my target is 85, but we hit 100% of social workers surveyed. I'm able to spend less time researching resources, and this is, again, what I do to social workers. I'm able to spend less time researching resources for clients and more time on direct service as a result of helping mamas. So I'm showing my impact in the community. A strong grant proposal always has strong outcome and impact measures. And I love what everybody said about storytelling, because I'm a storyteller. I love telling individual stories. They're really important. But funders at grant levels, they don't love them so much. They're great kind of to attach sometimes, but they want to know what your impact on the community is. They have to make a decision from hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of applications and figure out how their money is best spent. And so they're looking for bang for their buck. So they want to know how you are impacting the community. So if you're not tracking data, find a way to start doing it sooner rather than later. And if it is outputs, if all you can do right now is outputs, like how many diapers, we're going to talk about how you tell the story from a data perspective. Well, we donated out 100,000 diapers. Well, what does that mean? That's a great number, but we're going to talk a little bit about what that means. So if you're not ready to launch a full-on, this is in Word, send it out to my social workers that I work with every year. They all send it back to me. 5 seconds.
So you do it once a year?
I do it once a year. I do an annual survey. Along the way, I'll do check-ins with them, like, how are we doing? Like, what do you need from me, kind of thing. Or I'll get good stories for them, so that when I do a pitch, like a live pitch, I'll have good stories. But having really good outcomes is one of the best ways to know if you're grant ready, because you have to talk about what impact you're having on your community. It's very important. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So please feel free to adapt and do whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I have a question on that. So a few people I've heard, like, oh, you can look at our grant and just literally like copy and paste your own information. Is there like such thing as like plagiarism in grant writing?
No. If you're quoting 1 in 3 moms has to choose between diapers and food, I always say according to, so you're giving reference to research. What I do, so you also have something that we'll get to in a minute. This is one of the very first applications that Helping Mamas wrote, and it was a pitch contest, so I had to pitch for 5 minutes like Shark Tank style and submit a written grant, so that was fun. And so our outcomes, and it was for startups, and we were the only people that had nonprofit experience, so I think that's kind of why we won, because nobody knew how to write a proposal, and I think while we may not have pitched great, our proposal was strong. But it's really fun when we go through this, how far we've come since then. But we're going to walk through this to talk about telling your story. So what I do is, because some of this stuff is static, it doesn't change. My mission, my vision, and the way I tell my story doesn't change. So anytime I'm writing a really in-depth proposal, I go back to this. I pull it up, I copy the paragraphs out, and I ship it right in. So no, I don't care if other people may have issues. I totally don't care if people steal from me. If it's working for me, hopefully it'll work for somebody else. Does that make sense? So yeah, this is some basic data that I think you should be collecting. And being part of the National Diaper Bank Network is a good thing, because you're already having to give them some number on that annual survey. Those are good numbers to have. So number of client serves, demographics, number of items, and then impact surveys. But if you need to start basic, start with how many clients you're serving, and we're going to talk about a way to tell what that means to your community. So here are some potential barriers. So a lot of grant makers like to see organizations with budgets over $100,000. That does not always mean cash. one of the things you should really be looking at, and I know this feels like a lot, but if you do it right now, when you're getting started, you don't have to go back and do it again, and you're going to be able to get funding sooner rather than later. So I always say, even though it takes a lot of effort at the beginning, try and do it if you can, or find someone to help you do it. So we count our in-kind and we count our cash. You and I were talking about profit and loss statements the other night, which is not my area of expertise. I took one math class in college, and I have a master's degree in one math class. And but I can budget. So we talk about profit and loss. And so on my profit and loss statement, which it's not really called that, but it's a P&L, is our in-kind. And that puts my budget over $100,000 without even thinking twice. So they want a budget history. Usually the golden mark for a lot of funders is a 3-year financial history. If you haven't picked a fiscal year, be really deliberate and think about it. I picked a calendar year. Some people use the federal fiscal year. Some people do May to June. I picked a calendar year, and I'm really glad I did. So we started in August of 2014, so my first fiscal year closed in December of 2014. My second one closed last year. I'm closing on my third fiscal year, but I only have really 2 operating years behind me, but I have 3 years of fiscal year history, which kind of puts me over that golden mark, right? So that was smart, and I didn't mean to do it, but it worked out. So you don't have to, but for large grants, that 3-year thing is a big deal, but we're going to talk about how to get around it.
Do you value your volunteer hours on your financials?
So this is where I say, do what I say and not what I do. Not yet. There's a lot, if you look up Volunteer Match, there's a lot of Volunteer Resources of America. There's a lot of sites that you can go on. Google volunteer and valuing in-kind volunteers, and you will get some best practices for how to value what. So I get Vista members. So I'm going to have Vista members starting on Monday. So they're full-time employees for me for 33 hours a week for a year. But I don't pay them. They get a stipend from the federal government. So one of their titles is volunteer management. So what I can do is I can look on one of these volunteer sites, find the salary of a volunteer manager, and that's the in-kind value to my organization. That could be $35,000 that goes into my budget. If you have warehouse sorters, what is the value of someone that works in a warehouse? What is their average salary? You can find that, and there are, like I said, Volunteer Match is a really good place to start because they do have a lot of data, and you can find a lot of links off of that. There are ways to overcome the budget history. We'll talk about that. 990 versus audited. A lot of them ask for it, but they don't need it. So I've applied for lots of grants where they say, we want an audited financial statement. I send them my quarterly summary, my 990, and then I get awarded. Because a lot of times these small foundations honestly don't even know what an audited financial statement is. I mean, that's just the truth because they're tiny too. So you don't always need it. The smaller the grant, if they put audited in, I just send what I have because it's usually not a big application anyways. It may be just like a really small application. They say, I want an audited financial. I'm like, whatever, here's what I have, and then they take it because it's good stuff, but it's not audited. I'm not, again, $2,500 is not worth a $6,000 audit, but I submit it anyways. And you can call. Almost every grant that you will submit to has a place that you can call. Do not be afraid to pick up the phone and call and say, hey, this is Jamie, I'm so-and-so. I just have a question about one of your requirements. My budget is this. I really don't want to invest in an audit. You need an audit. Is that a do or die thing for you? And they'll tell you, yes, we have to have it, or no, just send me what you have. Just ask them. So how many of you know what about like a sustainability plan? Not a successions plan, a sustainability plan. You've heard about it? So a lot of times they will ask you, what's your sustainability plan? So I want to give you money one time, which, depending on the grantor, they may only give you money one time. They want to know what's going to happen when that money goes away. It doesn't have to be like, oh, I'm going to apply to this grant, and it's committed. So what I typically, October, 4 months when I submitted this. Here was my sustainability plan at 4 months. Helping Mamas has an amazing success in our first 5 months of operations. We are committed to being the long-term success of the agency and sustain this model. So far, we'd raised $13,000 in cash and $20,000 in kind in 5 months. So then I talked about what we did at our first volunteer event and how much money we brought, not money, but how much stuff we brought in to show this is something that's gonna work. I had one volunteer event, I had 50 people showed up, and we raised this amount in kind. So the first time ever. So like we had something that we could show that kind of worked. In addition to donations, we raised revenue for our organization by providing workshops and consulting. Here's where being a part of a national network works. We were not part of NDVN, and then I didn't even really know much about NDVN at that point. We were just reached out to be part of Baby to Baby. We know this model works. And this is where you can kind of get around that sustainability plan. So we referenced Baby to Baby, we referenced what they did, and we referenced how they got there. So there's an agency just like us and another organization. We are doing exactly what they are doing, and this is how they grew. So I use that, and I will tell you why I know that works. So one of the judges on that panel, and I used it in the pitch, I said, we are joining a national network in Baby to Baby. This is what they do. This is what they're going to do to help us, and this is how we're going to use their network. So that was in 2015. 3 months ago, I'm at this huge United Way thing. They'd asked us to speak at the event. One of the judges, who I hadn't seen in a year and a half, was introducing me to people and said, she's got something. We know this model works because there's a group in Los Angeles that does the same thing. He remembered a year and a half later that my sustainability plan was based on something else that had proven history, and I knew how to make that happen. So when you talk about your sustainability and how you know this works, you know what you say? We're a member of the National Diaper Bank Network. In 5 years, this is what the National Diaper Bank Network has done. This is how many members it has. This is how many diapers it's given out. This is how we use that network, and that's how you show you're sustainable. Is it gonna work every time? Maybe not, but it is a really strong model for why what you have works. So use that. So impact history, again, can be really hard at the beginning, but use your national network. Use the data they have. Hey, like we just started. We've only been around for 6 months. But in Find County, look where there's other diaper banks located. So for me, Chicago is a really similar area to Atlanta, right? Like we're a metro city with lots of rural around us. Similar demographics, similar everything. So I can go and look for an organization that does similar work in Chicago, call them and say, tell me what you're doing and how you got there. What outcomes, what are you tracking? And it's a really good way to say, hey, there's another organization in another town, similar demographics, and this is what's working for them. It's a really good way to show sustainability in history. And it shows you've put a lot of thought into what you're doing. It's not like you're copying, you have done your research on why this works.
If you're going to talk about this, you can stop me.
Okay.
But another barrier that we've found is that most grants are not for operational costs, right? But what we all need is to cover our operational costs. We need to pay our rent, and we need to, So I know there are ways to kind of disguise these
It's not
costs. Well, we
disguising,
put them
right.
into programs, right?
Right.
But I guess, could you just give us some kind of
Sure.
ideas about what types of things we can write
Sure.
for, but
So a
while
lot
covering
of grants will have, if they're larger sales size grants, like $10, $15, $20, $30,000, they may allow you an indirect cost. And it'll say no more of this grant proposal can be, only 5% of this proposal can be for indirect. Well, it's not a lot, but that's your rent, right? So that's one way around it. Now some
you
don't.
can't allocate rent to your program? Because like if the warehouse holds all the inventory,
Here's the beauty of what we do. And this is how I sell it. And so far it's working for me. Doesn't mean it's always gonna work for me. When I worked at another organization, right, like we were people. Our expenses was our staff and our people and our buildings. But that's because they were offices with computers. They weren't necessarily program related. That was straight up operations. If I don't have a warehouse, I don't have a program. If I don't have a person managing volunteers, I don't have a program, right? So it's a lot easier with the models that we use to justify your warehouse space as a program related expense. Because if you don't have a space to store it, you don't have anything that you're giving away. And if you're not providing direct service, like if you're not going out and teaching parenting education, if they are not coming straight to you, it's for that service, you're not providing direct service, your warehouse and your staffing really can be, now I wouldn't put 100% of it in there. You're gonna wanna look at percentages, and that's again a whole other class, but when you're talking about budgeting, you can roll it in. Now, I talk about what we do, because again, we do a lot of things, not just diapers. So I just wrote a grant, and hopefully we'll find out about it. It's like $10,000, and I wrote it for distribution of our hygiene kits, our health and safety program, and our educational kits. So what I have in educational kits are 3 books and 3 developmentally appropriate toys, right? And I talk about why education is important and why stimulating toys and books are important and why that's a program and why a body distributing that stuff is important. So it became part of my program. So I was able to write in for some staff for that, and I was able to write in for the actual product, which people love, love, love to fund your product. Most of the grants I've gotten have not right now been tons of operation. And we've gotten a fair amount for operation, but my favorite ones have been the ones I've been able to write to purchase car seats and cribs or diapers if I have to purchase diapers. People love that. It's a one-off for them. They're going to give you $5,000. You're going to go out and buy X amount of cribs, and you just kept a whole lot of babies safe. It's great. I mean, it is such a true thing, because they feel like their money in that moment had a massive impact. And I didn't say, I need staff to do this, which is what they don't like to hear. So our models are very fundable because we are distributing product, and people like to know that the product that you're going has an immediate impact on somebody.
I think I heard what someone mentioned earlier. Could we kind of like fudge a little on the how much we're using for product for staff?
No.
I mean,
Do not
what I'm
fudge.
asking?
Yes.
Like when we say the product costs $50 and we're using like $2 of it for staff.
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah, that came up in an earlier
Yeah, I
session
thought I heard that.
as price of product delivered as opposed to retail price of product.
Oh, I see what you're asking. Like, I thought you were saying like the person was written into the product as a cost. No, we don't do that. It depends. That's always tricky. Like, use best practices. Again, that's where you need to go. Like, go on GuideStar and find other organizations that are doing and look at their audits, and then if you have a good financial person or a CPA, take that audit to them and ask them, hey, like, we have a similar model. This is how they're counting their product. Is this a best practice? Is it passed for them? Do you think it would pass an audit for us? Because that's always your litmus test. You want what you're saying to be what you're doing.
Okay.
So when I do an in-kind value, I use for any kind of like clothing or strollers or whatever, if they're used, I use Goodwill and Salvation Army or St. Vincent de Paul, because they have a long history of best practices in the field with substantial audits. And so I used their pricing for that. Now, if I get, like, we got 150 car seats donated through a network, through the Baby Baby Network, through Graco. They were brand spanking new, and they were high end. And my mom, who was an accountant and auditor, literally watched every one come off. She counted every single item that came off. We looked up every single one, and we placed the fair market value for that item because it was brand new. It's $22,000 in my budget.
You talk about sustainability. What if you're so unique that there's no other program out there? Do you find something that's kind of
Yes.
similar?
Yes.
So I can talk about baby banks versus
Yes.
adult banks, and just that
Yes.
this is, okay.
We always say, because nobody in Atlanta was doing what we were doing, there is still nobody in Atlanta that does what I do with the amount of product and the amount of things that we do. Nobody really understood diaper banks, because for a long time the Atlanta Community Food Bank was the diaper bank. So here's how I pitch, and here's how I base stuff. We are the food bank of baby supplies for Metro Atlanta. Because even though I'm not giving out food, it is the same model with a proven history. So, absolutely.
You said before that people love to give product
Yep.
and readily give $5,000 knowing the exact impact. When you write that grant, is it $5,000 retail price of the diapers?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes and no. For diapers, let's just talk diapers, because a lot of you guys just do diapers. So there's the great listserv that we're, like, a lot of you, if you're diaper bank leaders, are a part of. And like probably this time last year, the question started circulating on that listserv of, how do you guys value the cost of a diaper? And there was like 30 different estimates ranging from 17 cents to 50 cents. went to my CPA accountant mom and said, how's the best way to do this? So we took the low, we took the high, we looked at the highest number of diapers, like size-wise, and we came up with 35 cents per diaper. But that's what worked for us in our area because of the, like we were giving out larger sizes versus smaller sizes. The larger sizes are more. We looked at the research that you guys had provided that all of these people, so if anybody ever came back, here's the thing, if anybody comes back and questions your financial records, have a really good, really strong explanation of why you came up with that number. Don't just be like, well, looked good to me. So if anybody ever came back and questioned my 35 cents per diaper, I'm going to go, look, we're part of this national network. Not that I'm putting the diaper bank on the line, but it's like, look, all these people across the country have these varying things. We took their range, made it work here, and it's very logical. No one's going to come back to you if you have a super logical, it may not be correct, and they may say, well, I want you to look at it this way. Fine, but they're not going to ding you and say, you're frauding everybody. You know, if you have a logical explanation, and that's always what you want to be able to do. Like I just told you, how do I base my product? Well, I looked at Goodwill, I looked at St. Vincent de Paul, and I looked at Salvation Army. No one's going to go, oh, you're lying. Because it's truly based on that. So here's some strategies for overcoming it. Consider partnering with a more established organization and let them be the lead on the proposal. So let me give you an example of this. And I'll kind of get into how I use it with the diaper bank model. But for a while I was at a large direct service organization. And even though they were really large, they refused to go after federal funding. Oh my God, I only have 15 minutes. Okay, I have to go fast. So they only wanted to they didn't want to be the direct person for federal funding. So we went to a partner agency that provided similar services. Says, hey, there's this great federal grant coming up. We don't want to be the lead on it. Will you apply for the federal funding and let us be the sub-grantee? Their financials were whatever. It was an $80,000 grant. We got $20,000 to provide a particular service under that. We have an agency that wants to write a grant with us now. They do direct service. They want for their in-home parenting education program to be able to give out baby products. They don't want to hold the baby products. They want us to hold the baby products. So they want to go and say, hey, we're going to provide this service of in-home parenting education. And we want Helping Mamas to be our sub-grantee to purchase baby supplies so that we can give them out as incentives to the moms in our program. They have 35 years of history, multi-million dollars of funding. They're going to be a way better grantor than present their financials than I am. But I get money, which is important. They're large enough that they can write in operational costs that are assessed in my portion of that grant to cover my expense for managing that grant, and I get to get product out to babies, so it's a win-win. So again, talk with a CPA about to audit or not to audit. I told you kind of how I feel about that. Impact, start now. Use your national network. Use them, use them, use them. I raised my hand, but they didn't get a chance to talk to me because here's my big thing. The national networks are amazing, and everybody's asking questions about product, and product is super important. But there's so much value in a national network that has nothing to do with product. And it is the data that you can access. It is the best practices that you can reference. And it is the history of that organization you can access. That will add almost as much value to your organization if you use it correctly as the product, until you have enough history of your own.
I know, I was going through the resource.
Yeah.
My first grant I did, I took from their templates.
Perfect, that's why they exist.
Yeah.
Researching and finding funders. Foundation Center. When I was at another organization, I discontinued our subscription, and they all thought I was crazy, but I increased their funding drastically, and we didn't pay anything for it. It's really expensive. If you can have an agency like MDBN that you can use it and access it for, great. But if you're a small organization, a subscription is kind of expensive. But you may get access to some smaller funds in your town that nobody's ever heard of. Usually those smaller things in your town that nobody's ever heard of already know who they're going to give to, and that's why they were set up to begin with, so it's really not. So it's pros and cons. Here's what I do. Let's pretend Huggies didn't support MDBN because I just need a national corporation. Let's pretend they didn't. And I knew that Huggies and my mission aligned. I go on to Huggies' webpage, I look for corporate responsibility, find out how they give, do they have a foundation, or do they like to do product? Who have they supported in the past? Because they love to show who they've supported in the past. And then I go to that person's webpage. Let me see what they're doing. Is it really similar to me? And how do I now stand out from them to be different but similar enough that I'm attractive to that funder. So I found a funder who's giving in my community to an organization that's similar, and I didn't pay anybody to do it. I just did my own research. So I Google companies, so I get the corporate responsibility, online using keywords like for your group, like foundations, children and youth, social services in your city, and you may find some grants. When I ran an outpatient mental health program, I would go to the other outpatient mental health programs' web pages and find their annual reports and see who funded them. It's free, it didn't cost me anything. Found it, got a grant, similar program, here's how we're different. Here you go. So that was a really fun way to search for grants. I loved doing that. I'm sure people hated me for it if they knew I did that. But I thought it was brilliant, right? Like I'm not paying anybody, and I found it. So here's some easy wins. Community foundations, EMCs. We have EMCs in Georgia, like electrical management companies. So like we have Walton EMC who does my electricity. They have like these small. I've gotten almost $15,000 in funding this year through 4 different local EMCs because they all give like $2,500. 1-page report. Don't have to do a lot of reporting back to them. They just want to know how I spent the money. That adds up for me. Like, so that's where I'm writing for product, right? Like, if you give me $2,500, I'm going to buy X amount of cribs, X amount of car seats, and X amount of diapers. Done. So, but that how I found them was going on to a food bank or a co-op's website and was like, oh, who's this Jackson EMC? Like, we have a Walton EMC, and then I found 4 and got it.
So what is EMC?
It's an electrical management company, so it's kind of like a co-op for electricity. So like, yeah, light company, yes.
Okay.
It's 2:00 on Friday, don't have the words. Community.
That was an emergency.
Yeah,
like,
we call them
ambulance
EMCs. I don't.
services.
Yeah.
EMT.
EMTs.
Oh, yeah.
Look for your community foundations. Go online, Google community foundation. You can do like a national search, and then there should be like a national organization for community foundations, and you can drill down and find yours. There's a lot in Atlanta because we're so huge. So my local community foundation is the Community Foundation for Northeast Georgia. And so I didn't go after them for money at first because I didn't think we were ready. So what I did is I reached out to their executive director. I found some events that they were hosting, and I went. So they did this great Women in Philanthropy thing. So I went, and it was a nice little dinner or whatever. Walked up, Randy, I'm Jamie. This is who I am. You may have heard of me. I got funded through United Way. I heard you did some board development stuff. I'd love to pick your brain about board development. Sure, let's make an appointment. Went in, sat with Randy, we talked about board development. He got to know who I was, what I did. I showed up at a bunch of other events that they had done. Guess what? He invited me to apply for funding. So what I did is I leveraged the funding from NDBN, where we did Funds for Change, wrote the same grant, they matched it, and so I had $5,000 to set up our warehouse. But I didn't ask him for money first. I went and participated in the services they were providing and learned about who they were funding, learned about how I could be involved in their organization, and built a relationship with their ED. And now I see him all the time. And so what that's done is I've applied since then. So he sent me his grant and I got awarded. He will send me an email, hey Jamie, like one of my donors, because they hold donor funds. So they're like an investment group. So they will hold a family fund. And they say, hey, like this fund likes to do children and youth stuff. Well, he called me 2 or 3 times and has said since then, hey, there's this really small foundation. Someone just told me about it. They do children and youth stuff. They don't advertise, but do you want to apply for it? Sure. So I did one $2,500 grant, and I've been able to apply for 2 or 3 because I built a relationship. I did the same thing. So United Way, we won some crazy, this is what launched us into the other stratosphere. We pitched this application, and we pitched, and we won $25,000 in our 5th month, and that's how we set our warehouse. It was crazy. Like, I don't even know how that happened. It's never gonna happen again. But through that, now my local county United Way asked me to be on all these committees. So guess what? I'm probably gonna get about $30,000 from my local United Way this year. Usually they want audits. They don't need an audit from me. They've never asked me for an audit. They know the work I do. I sit on committees for them, and I know them. They see me in the community. They know the work I do. They send me stuff all the time about connections because I worked a relationship before I asked them for money. And so that's really important because you want them to be invested in who you are in the community, not as someone that's asking them for money. I find that people really like you a lot more when you're like, hey, like Randy, like, he just put out this thing on LinkedIn and it's driving me crazy. Like, oh, Georgia has this huge early childhood education program. You know, our kids aren't reading at a 3rd grade level. So on his LinkedIn page, I said, hey, Randy, let's talk about that because I can't even get kids into early childhood education because they don't have diapers. Love to come talk to your donors about why diapers get kids in early education programs. Didn't ask him for money, but I said, I want to educate you. So I'm going to go educate his donors. What happens when you educate donors? So those are some of my tricks.
I want to add in too, so National Diaper Bank Network, we do grant search assistance for you. There's a form that's on our website. I think all these ideas are super innovative and awesome. With that foundation center, we have a strict subscription.
So use them.
To the databases that we can have our staff search for, grant money and opportunities.
I've utilized that. I've received like 3 pages.
So here's the thing, like, be careful though, because I like the Foundation Center, but I don't like them because they don't always update the stuff as accurately as they should.
No, I got it from her.
No, but it comes from the Foundation Center. So when I was working at other organizations, we'd be like, hey, like, we have a perfect fit for you. And they're like, oh, we don't fund that anymore. Where'd you find that? And we're like, on the Foundation Center that I'm paying $5,000 a month for, like, that's where I found. But again, that's not always accurate because whose responsibility is to update? It's that donor fund responsibility to update the person holding their information. So that's why I always do the extra research.
Have you ever utilized a capacity building grant in order to?
Those are my favorite.
Okay.
In the history of the world.
Trying to figure out how to link.
So let's skip ahead. So let's talk really quickly. Federal grants, I don't recommend them unless you're a large organization. States, look at don't go to your state DFACS page, your governor's office page. You'll find grants available there. People don't often look at their county pages. CDBG is block funding. That's at a county level, it's HUD funding. If you're ever looking to expand and get a big old building, they do huge block grants for buildings. So look through there if you're looking to ever purchase a building. So fun little secret. Do's and don'ts. So research the thing. Don't be like, oh, I heard they're really easy to write a grant for and if they fund animal stuff. Don't write to them about diapers. Don't. And people do that all the time. If you're a small organization with a small operating budget, don't ask for more than your budget is. Ask for a very small amount. I have like I said, maybe close to $200,000 budget. Don't go and be like, I want $150,000. They're going to be like, you're crazy, because like that's almost over half of my budget. Be really reasonable about what you're asking. And know that you can, if you ask for $10,000, you better use the $10,000 and know how you used it. Don't come up on the last month and be like, oh crap, I have $9,000 left because I didn't write the grant and price it out appropriately. It's a bad move.
Quick question, I don't know if you're going to touch on this because we
Touching on nothing else, go for it.
Okay, we don't have like individual program. We just have our one program. And so my budget is my budget.
Yep.
I don't have individual, so I just use that whole.
Yep.
Okay. And so when they're asking me, you want your operational budget and then you want your program, it's the same thing.
Yep.
So I'm just submitting one
Yep.
budget. Okay.
Letter of intent.
Do them.
Is there something, I feel like it's such limited information.
Yep.
Is there like a trick to
Yep.
like really make your organization stand out?
That's my story.
Yep. Hi, my name's We're Helping Mamas. I'm the food bank baby supplies in Metro Atlanta. Our mission is to connect helping mamas to mamas needing help. In 2016, I served over 4,000 individuals. This is what my impact was. This is why I'm writing to you. I hope we're a good fit. Would love to hear back from you. It's very basic. Start with, so data, really important when you're crafting a proposal. Start with what the national problem is. We all know 1 in 3 moms decide to choose diapers. Drill down to like poverty rates in your state and local level. And then follow up with how your programs and services impact that. And you will see some examples of in that, how we did that in this proposal, how we made that happen. Some big key phrases for those of you that are doing babies is generational impact. So 2 generations of impact is a huge thing. You need to hear that. So, and this is all going to be available, right?
It's all going to be available. We're going to continue to tap Jamie's and other people's brains, and we're going to really be working on building more resources because the National Diaper Bank Network is going to be going into its 3rd year of providing the Funds for Change micro grant, and we have sample budgets and sample language and templates, so this will be available. Make sure you write on your evaluation form what was useful to give Jamie and I feedback, and also don't be shy about what you would like to hear more of. And
Yeah, tell me what you don't want to hear.
Yeah.
Even if we want to have the PowerPoint from today.
You can have
Oh,
it.
yeah,
It's
it's
gonna be
definitely
listed.
get that. That's
Totally gonna be
available,
listed.
yep.
All right.
Yeah, you'll get it. Yeah, it's gonna be on the page. Here's a really quick data tell your story. Don't tell them that you gave 100% of social workers saw a reduce in. I say that 100% of the social workers surveyed saw a reduce of financial stress and anxiety as a result of helping mamas. What that means is these families were able to focus on the direct services that are moving them out of poverty. We know that when kids can't go to school hungry, if they go to school hungry, they can't learn. What do we know? Moms can't go to these programs and services and learn about poverty, moving out of poverty, job training, child abuse, if they're worried about their basic needs. So I just tied in my data. 100% of our social workers say they saw a reduce in financial stress. What that means is they are now focused on moving out of poverty. So use the data, but tell why it matters. So that's a huge, huge win. If you can tell why your data matters and what it means, you're going to be really good. Collaborate, collaborate, collaborate. If you have a partner model agency, love it. Tell them why this works. Why working with other nonprofits is huge. Talked about that. We're done, right? I'm done.
Yeah, thank you very much.